Free your staff to focus on high-impact work while offering round-the-clock assistance to every student. With Element 451, you can deploy AI agents that reason, act, and provide support at scale, solving problems, analyzing data, and crafting personalized outreach instantly. These AI agents expand your team's ability without replacing the human touch, allowing staff to dedicate their time to what matters most. Unlock the future of workforce enablement at element451.com. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager, a podcast that addresses the do's, don'ts, and dynamics of the digital ecosystem specific to higher education. I'm your host, Jenny Lee Fowler. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education social media management and marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. So joining us on the podcast today is Mickey Collins from Over the Pond. Mickey, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jenny. It's nice to be on. It's very, very strange to be on your podcast, having read your book and then met you. It's very cool. This is like
Wait, is it is strange in a good way or strange in a bad way?
Strange in the best way. I'm glad you asked.
Okay. I was going to say, well, when I met you, I felt an instant sort of rapport, connection. I don't know what you want to call it. So you were someone I wanted to learn more from. So I'm so excited to have you on. And of course, we want to learn more about you, Mickey. So tell us, how did you get started in higher ed social media?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a normal story, but I was a student union officer at my previous institution. So after I graduated, I was an SU officer, very much to work out what I did and didn't want to do. I was very open-minded to lots of different projects and found myself always drawn towards the digital content, the social media, any way that I could engage students with social media, I was there, and ended up getting a role at the university and then worked there for 5.5 years. So when I first started in that assistant role, I was a team of 2 and we were looking after the whole website, video and social media, which I feel like is a very normal way for a lot of people that get into social media, it being just like a small part of your role and not being the whole thing. So we did a lot of trial and error, and we had to be very, very tactical about the resources that we had and the very limited to no budget that we had to kind of make waves in the social space. And within the 5.5 years that I was there, we ended up being one of the leaders in social media in the UK, despite being such a small team, such a small university. So I feel very lucky for the experience I had, but I know that people will be able to relate in the fact that I was in a very small team with social media being a part of my...
Oh, absolutely. I feel like it's commonplace, but we definitely will tap into your expertise and what you've learned. I'm really, really excited about that. But it's funny, you started out with, I don't know if this is a normal story. I don't know that any of us, what's normal? I feel like at this point, we've all had our separate different paths, and which makes it all so interesting to hear. But thank you for sharing that, Mickey. But one thing, from talking to you, it sounds like you were an early adopter in using sort of what is now come to be known as like students as influencers. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like when I get into this story, it's going to feel like I've forgotten what the question is, but I promise I'll circle back and the answer is there.
Then thank you for taking us on this journey. Yeah, no, you're good.
I don't remember the question. Don't worry, I do. I'm going to circle back. To give a bit of context, within social media, within the role that I was doing, it was very much focused towards prospective students and student recruitment. So we knew, and this isn't brand new information, that our prospective students wanted to hear from current students and graduates. And you hear it at every conference, you read it in every recruitment report. Like, we know this thing, but it was recruiting the students that became the problem. We could never find the right students, or we just thought the students weren't interested in working with us in that way. We got to a point where we had just one student that we worked with all of the time because we trusted them and we knew they wanted to do it. It made it seem, probably to an external audience, that we only had one student at the university. It was like the same person over and over again. So we knew we needed to be a bit more creative within our recruitment process. So we turned to social media. We were like, let's trial it. So we used the search bar for key terms of our university. We used the Q&A feature on Instagram, just to see if students would be interested in working with us in different ways, and nominate other students that they may have seen content that they've created. And that's when the influencer thing started, because as soon as they started to nominate other students, or we started to search for those key terms, we realized that we had all of these students with genuinely highly engaged audiences that were our potential target audience, already creating content about the university. So we're like, this is really interesting. So we were like, wonder if we can start working with them, not only on the institution accounts, but on their own accounts as well. That we'll trial it, see what happens. And honestly, Jenny, we had such a small budget that we're like, this feels like a risk, but we'll try it. And it worked so well. So we originally worked with a very small pool of students that had a big following and high engagement. And one of our students, I think she had about 300,000 followers, and her audience was a very young audience, but all of her content was about advice and Q&As. And she already had a lot of questions about university in general. So we trialed it with her. We did like a little Q&A piece with her on our own account, and it got nearly 1 million views, which is big numbers anyway, but our university is only 5,500 students.
No, don't. That is big for anyone. That's huge. Yeah.
So yeah, we used her as an example in a trial, and she was super open to it because for her career goal was to be an influencer. So that helped her out going forward, that she's like, I've already done these partnerships with other people. So yeah, we worked with her, and then we worked with a whole other bunch of students at different times of the recruitment cycle and different channels as well. So yeah, that's how we started.
When you were saying you're doing searches, do you mean searching terms within social media platforms themselves?
Yeah, so we were using mainly Instagram and TikTok to find content that people potentially were already creating. So we used different variations of the university name. And so I worked at the University of Chichester. To say this is past tense as well. I don't work there anymore, but I used to work there. But online, everyone called it Chi Uni or Chichester Uni. No one ever wrote University of Chichester. So we made sure we did different variations to see what other people were saying. And we just found a heap of content that students were already creating. So we started to collaborate with the people that clearly wanted to do it. So we could guide them in a way that our audience wanted to see that type of content as well. So that's where we really started to see success with the students we were working with. And then that meant the more students we worked with, the more other students then saw that and were like, wait, I want to do that. And we got to like a beautiful point where we had too many people to work with, which is such a nice problem to have. It's slightly stressful, but it's so interesting to go back to like when we first started and we had one student and one student only. And then we got to a point where we were working with so many people, and it was so beautiful. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things, and the thing I miss the most.
That's amazing. And you bring up a good point. Don't search your university like how you would say it or call it. You have to know what the community is calling your university and search it that way. So that's a really, really great point. You particularly capitalize this, it sounds like, on TikTok, which in the past 48 hours or so in the US has been banned and then unbanned. And then, so if you had the app on your phone, you can continue to use it. But for some reason, if you deleted it or hadn't previously downloaded it, I think it currently is not available as we're talking in the app stores. So I think that's the current situation with TikTok, but current users are still using it. So as we talk, how did you, just to I guess level set where we are with TikTok, but how did you turn it from maybe like a communications to an actual tool to an actual recruitment tool?
Yeah, so we were one of the early adopters in the UK when it first came out. So I think we started the account in 2019. We were one of the first in the UK to be on it. We weren't the first, but we very quickly grew an audience to, I think it was 25,000 followers by the time I left,
Mm-hmm.
which went from the fifth most followed platform to the most followed platform out of our university ones within a year, because of the way that we were working. And I think the content we were producing as a university, it was a little bit tongue in cheek, a bit like Duolingo, Ryanair. We wanted to make waves because people in the town the city of Chichester didn't even know the university existed, let alone anybody else. So we would really play into that
Oh, come.
and people
Really?
commenting like, "Who are you? Who are you?" So we really ran with that of so that we could make waves and
I
reach as
love
many people
that.
as possible, just to say who we are. And then that's when we started to work with students on their own accounts. So they were then creating content about their experiences. So when people were then finding us, they were really interested in what we were doing. And then they were seeing the perspectives and the stories and the experiences of our students from themselves. So it seemed more authentic too. And we used to use the hashtag try uni on across everything as much as humanly possible. And when this data was available within 2022, hashtag try uni had been viewed 2.2 million times, and only 40% of that was from the university account. The rest of that was from other people's accounts. So that's where we started to really capitalize on TikTok, was working with other people on their own accounts as well. So we used to use different types of students at different times. So where TikTok has originally positioned itself as a discovery platform, we
Yes.
kind of made an assumption, and we were seeing this quite a lot, that where the For You page was mainly people, it would be content you wanted to see or were interested in or engaging in, rather than people you were following. So it made sense to be using it at the beginning of the recruitment cycle. So that's where we would just try and reach as many people as possible, so we knew who we were, so then we could start to then zone in on them in other ways. And that's where we worked with the bigger influencers with bigger engagement, students that had a potential target audience that were our target audience.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked with them so that we could try and like gain that traction that way. And then as TikTok started to position itself as a search tool, we realized that we could start to use it for conversion as well. So that when you're searching all these variations of your university or college name, you can start to see what things people are also searching for, but also start to look through the content that's already created within those search terms, because you'll start to see all of the questions that are going amiss, all of the things that you should be creating content about. So you can start to work with students, not with big followings, big engagement, because you're not trying to target their audience anymore. You're trying to create content in the spaces that people are searching. Be working with students that have very small followings and small engagement, because you're not trying to target their audience anymore. You're trying to create content in a space you know that people are looking. So that's the difference in the students that we were working with. Was right at the beginning, we'd work with the ones with the big engagement, big following, to target their audience. And then as we went through the funnel and the people that had already applied knew who we were starting to search for things on TikTok. That's when we started to work with the students with smaller followings to create the content that people were actually searching for. So that's a very basic overview of the different types of students that we worked with. But that was the success of our TikTok account.
Want to create an AI workforce for your institution? Learn how to design AI agents for advising, data analysis, and student engagement at the AI Engage Summit. This free virtual event in February will equip you to manage complex, multi-step workflows across departments. Register now at enrollify.org/engage. Oh, well, so you said a couple of things that I love. So the first one was that you didn't try to mask the fact that people didn't know who you were, where you were. You leaned into it, which is really sort of organic, right? You just owned what you were, and you sort of, leaned into what and who you are, which I love, and which I absolutely believe in. For us, like, we lean into what we are. Like, our students love math. They're quirky. We love the nerdy things, and so we lean into that. So I loved that, and I loved how you strategically said it sounded like you were going for growth into, like, discover, like, you were really looking for those new audiences, right? The people, like, to make the For You page and to tap into new eyes, right? And more than maybe growing your current or engaging your current audience. Your audience shifted. So
Yeah.
I love that. But I do want you to dig deeper into that fun thought of the funnel? Because I feel like a lot of higher ed social media managers are communication folks and they don't have a formal marketing training. So can you kind of talk about that and connect the thought, like shift from communications to think about what the funnel is? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this question of where would be the best place to start. And I've got two things that I think are probably my biggest pieces of advice from my experience, I guess, which are thinking about what content at what time, but also how to measure success of the content at what time. So if you're understanding what your audience needs, it's going to be very different at different times of the recruitment funnel. So at the beginning, it might be general information about who the university is, where it is, the location, what kind of things is going on, is there any open events, to the later stages where they've already applied or they may even know they're already coming and you're in like keeping warm conversion stage, that it needs to be a little bit more personalized. They've got very specific questions. They're looking for accommodation tours because they know they're going to be living in this accommodation. They want more information. And I think the most beautiful thing about social media is the way that you're able to connect and create community. And I think that's one big thing that social media can do and help with at all points of the recruitment cycle. And at some points, especially in the later stages when they know they're coming, some things might be they just want to connect with other people. So if you're able to facilitate that, that's when it can really be helpful too. And then the other point is measuring success of the content. So I think with social media, it's really easy to make it seem that something's performing well. Not doing the thing that it's supposed to be doing, then it's not actually successful. So near the early stages, it may be that you're just trying to increase awareness of the university, increase interest in applying to the university as well. So a success metric may be that you want to look at reach or impressions or how many people you're reaching with that post. Whereas in the later stages, you've got a much more targeted audience because from a prospective student point of view, of the people that are definitely coming. So it might be that actually at that point, the success is you want them to be really engaged. You want them to be commenting. You want them to be messaging the institution accounts or sharing stuff to their peers as well. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is making sure that you know the intended purpose of each piece of content so you can measure the success accordingly.
That is a brilliant summary of engaging, the metrics that you have access to your intent, right? And connecting the two. Brilliant. And so when you talk about each stage and you're just creating general content to hit those goals, right? Those principles, you're just putting it out there and hoping the content reaches those that are seeking that very specific piece of content. Is that
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we used to do quite well is that we asked the same question at different points of the recruitment cycle to see like if the concern of that person changed. And it might be situational, like for example, in 2020, it was COVID. That was the biggest worry. Am I going to be able to come? Whereas others are quite consistent throughout of like, right, okay, once I've applied, my biggest worry is now making friends and moving away from home. And all of those types of things were quite consistent. But making sure you're doing that research year on year, because it might be that you're like, oh, I've done it for a year. I know exactly what they want to know at each stage. But there might be other things that are coming up that you've not considered because you're basing it off of last year's content needs. So I think making sure that you're checking in each year as well to see if anything changes. If it doesn't, then great, because you've got content you've already created from the previous year. But I think that's something to think about as well.
How are you doing that? Are you doing that through surveys in real life, or how?
Yeah, we used to do it through surveys, and when Facebook was a big thing, we used to have an applicant group. So once they'd applied, they got invited to join like an applicant group so they could then start to meet other people and know things that are going on, any live events. And before they joined, I made sure that they couldn't join without answering my question of like, what are you most concerned about? Which was really, really helpful because it meant that like one of them, if it was making friends, okay, well, that is already kind of done once you join this group. So if that's your biggest concern, that's great. We can help you with that straight away. But then if there's other things cropping up, it might be that we didn't have the content, or maybe it needs to be a bigger thing of like a more live event. So yeah, that's what we did, and we did it year on year.
That's super smart. They're a captive audience at that moment because they want into that group. So ask them questions as a point of entry. We all should be doing that, Mickey. We all should be doing more of that. So I feel like a lot of the principles that you were talking about can actually be replicated in other platforms like Instagram or even maybe YouTube Shorts with the rise of YouTube Shorts. But it's not just TikTok specific. I feel like it's sort of platform agnostic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my experience, it was trialed on TikTok because that's where we started to see more success. But then it can be rolled out onto other things. And we used Instagram quite a lot as well because we knew that app was very, very important during the conversion stage of the recruitment cycle as well. But I think there's especially like there's so many different like features on the apps of like Instagram and TikTok now where you can do collaborative posts. So if you're going to work with other accounts, it could be the careers department, or it could be a student that you're able to then reach different audiences to. So yeah, you can absolutely use it across different channels.
Earlier, you said that TikTok moved from number 5 to number 1 with the most popular platform for your school. Can I ask what was 1? What did it overtake? Which platform did it overtake?
Now you're testing my memory. I think it might have been LinkedIn, you know. I think we had the biggest audience on LinkedIn. And then, yeah, when I say over a year, I mean, this graph, honestly, it was like TikTok was rising and then it literally did this, like the end.
What they call the hockey stick, right?
And I don't know if this is relevant, but it feels like worth mentioning. There was a dog on campus that belonged to the receptionist and she used to bring him on and we used to just like sometimes take pictures or do content with him. This dog, honestly, was the most famous dog, like to the point that the owner, she messaged me saying that she went to a wedding in London, which is maybe an hour and a half away from Chichester. And she said that a guest that she'd never met came up to the dog and was like, "That's Lincoln from the University of Chichester." And she was like mind blown. Like, like this dog, like I feel like maybe you've got the wrong person on the podcast. It should have been the dog. Like the dog.
No, but that's a great, actually, we have a campaign just that is always running. It's called Pets of MIT because, you can't lose with pets and babies. And that's just, I think, a fundamental, tip that we can all capitalize on. But I just now I want to meet Lincoln. Is he still famous?
Still famous. He ended up becoming a prospectus cover as well, like a limited edition prospectus cover. I think he's got like a little jacket now that says official campus dog. Like he's going places, Jenny. I've got contacts. I can introduce you.
I think he should have his own merch for sure. But that's a great to like lean in to what is working with your audiences. I love that. And Mickey, I can't let you go without asking you the last question is, what is your confession?
So my confession is that over the Christmas period, the company I work for, Pickle Jar, they give us 2 weeks off because we work with higher education, so our clients are off anyway. But I actually deleted LinkedIn off my phone because I realized how much I was like scrolling through it, like outside of work hours. And really, I only use LinkedIn for work. So I decided that I was going to have a full switch off anyway. So I deleted LinkedIn for the 2 weeks and I haven't actually downloaded it again. And I use just the desktop version now. And I try to limit anything that might be work related outside of those hours. And it's something I used to do when I was working heavily within social media and using it day to day. I like during my annual leave, I used to always delete the social media apps off my phone just so that I could have a break. Because I think that's probably one of the hardest things in social. Like your job is 9 to 5, but the users are not 9 to 5. And especially if you see a notification or that you see something, it can be really hard to not look, and it just blurs that work-life balance so much, doesn't it?
I agree. And I love that. And, I'm hearing more and more social media managers that do it professionally do that. They, during breaks, they delete it all together, which I love. I love hearing this. Can I follow that up with another question? Sometimes with me, I find that it's the muscle memory. Like, even if it's not on my phone, I feel like I still reach for it, or I'm clicking things just because my muscle, the muscle memory is there. Did that not happen for you? Once it was off, did you not even?
So it wasn't too bad with LinkedIn because then I was like just on other social media apps. But in the last couple of weeks, I've realized how much I'm just always on my phone anyway. And so I deleted the other apps just for a little bit, just to be like, come on, Mickey, like a little bit of a punishment. And what I realized is in the moments that you've got like some free time. So like I was waiting for the train. I was like, oh, I've got 8 minutes. And then I got my phone. I was like, what am I going to look at? Like literally there's nothing on my phone to look at. Like I was just like looking through my photos. I was like, what do I do in this 8 minutes? Which just seems ridiculous. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I think that's the second thing that we need to untie, right? It's the fidget, maybe the fidgeting. But Mickey, it was absolutely a joy to have you on the podcast. And trust me, you've got me thinking in social and the funnel in a totally different way. So thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. I love the fact that I made notes for this podcast and still managed to put in stories that I didn't even realize I remembered. So there we go. So thank you so much for having me.
Love it. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Mallory Wilsey, and so many others of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.